Wherefore, Series 3, Episode 23. Not much happens in June. It is too hot. The citizens of Stroud wilt gently and try to stay in the shade. Those who have old stone cottages with thick walls have reasons to be grateful. Those who live in modern flats, less so. The wild swimmers infest the Worcester lakes like some kind of noisy disease. They are grateful for the cold, deep water. The wildlife is not glad to see them. One of the lakes is home to numerous ghosts who drowned there during some kind of exercise back in the Second World War. Their seething resentment at the cheerful teenage swimmers is palpable, if you're open to that sort of thing, which most people aren't. None of the wizards go wild swimming, although Amagin tries very hard to persuade Marjorie into a body of water. He points out that as she can drive, they could even go to the seaside. "I am not getting in the sea," Marjorie says. "It will be cold, and I do not wish to smother myself in sunscreen, nor do I have any intention of exposing my bare flesh in any way whatsoever." Amagin gives her his whole spiel about curves, goddesses, inner beauty, and not body shaming. He developed this speech for the specific purposes of getting laid, but he thinks there is a fighting chance it will get him into the sea. Marjorie is unmoved and gives him her spiel about body autonomy. This is a speech she has developed for the specific purposes of not getting laid and fending off unwanted attention. Despite Amagin's best efforts, this is still Marjorie's body, and autonomy wins. The other wizards are mostly focused on not overheating. One of the good things about being a wizard is setting up your home environment to perfectly suit your needs. Unfortunately, getting the rest of reality to behave in exactly the right way is harder, not least because there's always some other wizard around with different ideas. Winklepicker is something of a sun worshipper and enjoys the heat. William would exist in a state of perpetual twilight if he could. Whitminster is out and about with a selection of microclimate hats. Stroud is prone to microclimates, so is readily persuaded to have a few more. It's a simple enough process to have a microclimate that exists under your hat. The wizard Whitminster goes forth in massive sun hats and is always perfectly comfortable. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if all of the wizards agreed about fixing things and worked together. I wonder how many wizards it would take to solve the climate crisis or end hunger. But there's not much point wondering about wizards and mass consensus. As the saying goes, ask 2 wizards, get 3 opinions. Some of them can't reliably agree with themselves, and all of them have issues around agreeing with each other. Cooperation remains a bit alien. The Stroud lot have improved on this score and can band together for short stints. Even so, it's hard to imagine them taking on a larger project and doing anything other than arguing about it. Mind you, it's not just wizards. Imagine if all the billionaires decided to work together to solve the world's problems. Imagine if all of the world's politicians decided to try that. The trouble is, we think of winning as an individual activity. I'm not sure most of us even understand what winning and losing means in a context where the world is in peril and ecosystems and weather systems are falling apart, but there we go. Wizards have more power than average, but are not significantly better people than average people, which is a shame. Also, it's just easier to figure out how to make your own personal microclimate for your own ease and comfort than it is to figure out solutions for climate chaos. You can't just scale things up. You can't put a really big sun hat on the world and decide what the temperature should be underneath it. You can't even put a big sun hat on Stroud. Helicopters would get stuck in it, and there would be all kinds of technical problems involving rain, and anyone under the edge of the brim would drown in the first downpour. Magic just doesn't scale up well. Things that are charming and effective on the personal scale become dangerous and unpredictable if you try to tackle something larger in the same way. Wamblethorpe's boat is a good example of this. It's just the one boat, and most of the time Wamblethorpe is the only person on board. The boat changes size to suit the wizard's whims and needs. You might look at this magic and postulate that we could deal with all kinds of land use problems by just folding everything up in the same way and making it smaller. Except then, you have to deal with all the interactions, all the comings and goings and size changes. And what takes a moment of will becomes a full-time job. No one could run a city to take up less space without going quite entirely round the bend in a matter of hours. It all comes down to how much attention you can pay. The limit of magic frequently turns out to be the amount of stuff you can pay attention to. When you hit that limit, a range of things can happen. If you are wise and sensible, you recognise the limit and stop there, and everything is fine and under control. Keeping going and breaking your mind is always a possibility. The third option is loss of control, in which your magic continues in some way, but you are no longer on top of it or able to fully dictate how it manifests. This seldom goes well. You are, of course, going to have to stay alert for this kind of issue, more so if you're going to become a weaver. Weaving works best on the small scale too, where you can see how the changes you make affect the immediate patterns. Like other forms of magic, weaving doesn't scale up well. The difference between weaving to change the outlook of the people in your area and trying to change a whole country, for example, is immense. If you can picture a geographical area in a meaningful way, you might well be able to weave to change its outlook. But the bigger things get, the harder it is to stay in control. And so your magic can start a process you can't handle or direct. It's always tempting to want to change the world in large and dramatic ways with the minimum effort. But trust me, the odds of that playing out in the way you intended are small indeed.